show film first? Maybe, I don't know.
Show film first?
I think so, yeah. I don't know. 20 minutes? Marco, I'm a big fan. Yeah. This is working out. How are you, sir?
Right here in front of you.
Oh, yes. I'm gonna touch your hair, too.
How you been? Good?
I've been solid. Busy as fuck today. You guys came for the shoes?
I didn't really know what it was, bro. Like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And then I saw Tom Sachs, and I was like, oh shit, let me pull up in this. And now I just feel like I'm lucky as fuck.
You guys been here all day?
When's it start?
It started at 7. It was supposed to start at 6. I don't know. Let me see. His like producer. I'll tell you right now. At least when it was supposed to start. Yeah. But she told me 6 a.m.
Did you just get here too?
I got here like 6. They told me to get here at 6. They were like, get here at 6. I was like, alright. So we started at 6. I was like, alright.
Do they have drinks here? Outside? Or no?
I think at that lounge. There's like a lounge.
Is it like a gallery too? I literally don't know what this is.
You just got it?
Yeah.
So Frieze is like it's like a whole entire art. Huh? It's good. This is one part of the song. Look it up. Just look up. I mean, Mr. Fast. What's going on?
I'm lost in you, bro. I don't know what's going on. I'm just here.
I'm trying to think. Wait. So somebody gave you this and was like, alright, I'm gonna put up.
Not her agent sent it to her.
So yeah. Frieze is it's just like it's a big art.
Yeah. A gallery or just like art thing in general?
I came tonight just to see this, but I'm gonna probably come back tomorrow.
Oh, come back tomorrow.
I'll be here.
Because is there like actual art installations as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm trying to see that for sure. That's what I thought this was.
This is
Hello,
just like
everyone.
one small
And it's
part.
really sick?
It would be great if everyone could sit down, please, so we can begin the screening. My name is Jennifer Higgie. I'm the editorial director of Frieze magazine, and it's an enormous honor to be here tonight for this screening of Tom Sachs' film, Paradox Bullets. It goes for about 27 minutes, and then we'll be having a conversation with Tom and Werner Herzog and Van Neistat here, and there'll be questions as well. So it's a really exciting evening, and I'm enormously honored to be part of this. So without further ado, let's watch the film. Thank you.
Do the easy thing first as a warm-up to ease into the hard thing. The opposite is equally valid. Do the hard thing first Because it takes more time, you are fresh, you can work in daytime, stores are open, and help is not out to dinner. Savor good problems. Procrastination is for good problems. If at first you don't succeed, give up immediately. Move on to some other task. When you circle back, your subconscious will have worked on it. Like sleep, only cheaper. Kill bad problems. Bad problems are best solved immediately. When you procrastinate a bad problem, it will sap your mental energy, your focus, and your time. Talk with others and find a solution before the problem consumes any more energy. When you get a parking ticket, for example, just pay it. often get angry when they are hungry or they have to wait. Although a freak out is absolutely forbidden in the studio, there is virtue in it. After a good raging freak out, the freaker is spent calm and humbled. But he's also ashamed. Often he has created yet more problems for himself. Avoid frustration and keep attacking the problem until it dies. Never yell. Scream only if you are hurt and need urgent attention. In order to know when to quit, we must be familiar with the quitting coefficient. We illustrate the quitting coefficient using the following graph. The y-axis represents the progress of your task or project from nothingness to completeness. The x-axis represents the amount of time we spend on our task. This asterisk represents our point of maximum return. This is the optimum quitting point. Notice the vast amount of time between our most productive phase and our point of maximum return or quitting point. In business, we would quit here to maximize profit, but in our business, we must persist. We may want to quit during this diminishing returns phase as our efforts become sluggish, tedious, and heartbreaking, but we press on. After the point of maximum return, our efforts will begin to ruin our work. We rely on our carefully tuned intuition to quit precisely at the point of maximum return, helping to ensure that the fruit of our labor falls within the desired magic zone. nothing is ever done. But we quit at the point where the work begins to cover up the evidence of the work. The athletic analog to the point of maximum return is just before the injury point. In an athletic endeavor, we aim to train up to, but not beyond, the point of injury. We repeat this process again and again, till death do we part. Thus we never give up, learning when to quit. We are mystics, not rationalists. Art, like marathon running, is an irrational, useless endeavor. but we expend the enormous energy art demands anyway. Because through our efforts, we expand our threshold for the human spirit. This is what distinguishes us from the cows in the field.
Rather good chairs. Like being in the kitchen. Thank you so much, Tom. That was really fantastic. It was amazing to see it at that size. Just to introduce the guests tonight, it's Tom Sachs, Neistat, and Werner Herzog. And so just to get the ball rolling on this, I'd love to hear something about the evolution of how this film came to be. And obviously, Van and Tom, you wrote this together. And what was your thinking around getting Werner to narrate it? Because they feel, many of the sentences feel like very Werner Herzog sentences, but you wrote them. So maybe you could talk about that evolution.
Like most of the great ideas in this film, Werner Herzog was Tom's idea. And this kind of is a sequel to a film that Tom and I made called 10 Bullets, which was written by Tom Sachs and John Ferguson, and it's the sort of the studio, Tom Sachs' studio behavior manual.
and this movie was written by Alex Cholis Wood, who when worked in the studio doing a lot of management stuff. When he left, he wrote his 10 bullets to me, which was sort of like, this is how to be a better manager as I'm leaving you. It's a parting gift. And Van and I adapted that. But I think it's important to acknowledge Werner here, because without even realizing it, I think one of the reasons why Van and I have worked successfully so well for so many years, like 16, 17, 18 years.
Since 01.
And is because we kind of grew up with watching Werner's movies, and we are in a way his disciples of like we write in his voice without even thinking about it, because we internalize so many of the ideas.
And I would say that rings true for my peers in my generation of filmmaking. Like, this man is like the man who taught us how to make films, really. And if you haven't done so yet, watch Mr. Herzog's masterclass. It is absolutely the best one. I've watched 15 of them, and by far, yours is the best. And I want to say one thing, that final line, this is what distinguishes us from the cows in the field. Mr. Herzog came up with that on the spot.
And Werner, you obviously have directed, I think it's 71 films now, but you're also an actor. You were the villain in Jack Reacher, among other roles I was hearing yesterday. But so when you got this script, what were your initial thoughts about what was being?
Yeah, well, in this film I didn't have to play a villain. I'm only good at that. But when I saw the film and I saw the text, I had the feeling, yes, that's very close to my own voice, and I do believe that Tom himself wrote it in a way with me in the back of his head without knowing whether I would do it or not. So, but I recognized something, and I immediately said, yes, I can do that. Let's go and record it, but let's record it well, and it should not be amateur stuff. It should be in a real studio. And I added a very few things which somehow only emphasize the tone that the two of you put into the film.
I think you also wrote the sort of the motto of this movie, which is the opposite is equally valid. And that's on the back of the zine that you all get.
It's written here. Yeah, the contradiction is equally valid. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll just correct your film. Yeah.
That.
So that's Werner's writing on the back here. And so this idea of, in a sense, freedom through constraint, the idea of it's how you run your studio, that you have this video that you show people who work in your studio, that it's got 10 bullets, 10 rules, which in a sense makes for a more efficient studio, and in a sense allows the imagination to roam once it has constraints. And I guess that's the paradox of this film, that there are these rules throughout that help make life and artistic life more functioning, I guess. And rules are obviously something that's been part of a lot of what you do, like your tea ceremonies and your space programs.
Well, there are a dozen of us that work in the studio, and I like to think of it as a teaching hospital. And the Eames studio has always been a big inspiration for us, and I see this, like 10 Bullets, as an industrial film. And Charles Eames said that he liked the constraints that the clients would put upon him because it would help him create against the existential abyss. In other words, a couple of rules gives you freedom. So this is sort of our, these are cult indoctrination films.
Yeah, in a good way. There's good and bad rules, I guess, in life.
Yeah, but it's like the 10 Commandments, it's just a compass that helps point you in the right direction.
Right.
It's like nothing's perfect, it just helps guide you a little.
And I guess that's a theme in the film, that whenever one rule is expressed, then its opposite is always true. And
had a creative process.
Yeah. And is that the only Sol LeWitt line from it, or it was inspired generally?
No, there's one other, and that's just turn to scripture.
Yeah, rational thoughts must be followed rationally and absolutely, something like that.
That's a drawing of Solowit at the back of the little book. Werner, when I was doing research for this talk and I was looking at your Rogue Film School, and there were these rules that were presented on the homepage of that, but then you mentioned yesterday that these weren't written by you. These were, in a sense, fabricated from perhaps things you might have said before. How important are rules to you in filmmaking? Sorry, how important are rules to you in filmmaking?
Well, it's very strange because on the internet I just learned yesterday from Tom there are a compilation of my 24 rules of filmmaking. That's nonsense. It was just done by some imposters. I'm present in Facebook and in Twitter and in whatever. I think now even in dance videos in TikTok for the 12-year-olds or so. Anyway, it's a world that you cannot trust. And some imposters who speak in my name, who imitate my voice, put those 24 rules together. When you ask me directly, there are no rules in filmmaking. Just common sense and prudence, and you have to have it in you to see things at the horizon that others do not see yet. And you have to be in capacity to articulate them. So that's all that's needed. But of course I have done an online sort of masterclass that you mentioned. It's a company that does these things. You can learn tennis from Serena Williams, and acting from Dustin Hoffman, and architecture from Frank Gehry, I think, or whoever. And filmmaking, I'm one of those, but it has had some sort of real impact on young aspiring filmmakers, because it's absolutely no nonsense. There's no feel good, and it gives sort of advice and perspectives for those who are aspiring filmmakers. And of course, one of the things, and in a way it contradicts, it does not really fully contradict when I'm asked, and you are one of those here, you cannot take no for an answer. I have moved a ship over a mountain because I did not take no for an answer. That's nonsense. Of course I take no for an answer when prudence and connection with the real world tell you this is undoable. What I do is very simple. Moving a ship over a mountain, I do the doable. And it's so doable that I think every grown-up man should move his ship over the mountain once in his life.
One of the things that Tom and I were trying to get at with this film was that if you push something far enough, if you push an endeavor far enough, you do reach these paradoxes. And what gets you through the paradoxes, what you use your intuition to go, am I going to do the hard thing first on this one, or am I going to do the easy thing first on this one? I was watching this YouTube interview from like 1956 of Carl Jung yesterday, and his definition for intuition was a perception. I have it written down. Intuition is a perception by ways or means of the unconscious.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
I wouldn't trust in such statements because it comes from psychoanalysis, and that is one of the monumental mistakes of the 20th century. It's not only that, it's major other things, collapse of social utopias like communism or fascism and many other things that make me believe that the 20th century in its totality, in its entirety, was a mistake.
About intuition, in school we learn 1 + 1 = 2, and in the studio we learn 1 + 1 = 1,000,000. But we have to learn to select just the right, wrong two things that when are combined have that exponential explosion. And in classical terms, I think it's easy to teach Apollo in school, but it's really hard to teach Dionysus. And this movie, or half of it, or sorry, Werner, what Jung would call the shadow part of the duality of man, is cultivating the intuition. And these rules here, or these 10 bullets in this movie, are really about strategies of finding that we've used over the years. And I think procrastination is the most underrated creative tool.
Procrastination is?
Yeah, just if you have a problem and you don't know how to solve it, just move on to the next problem and keep working on it.
And is this because procrastination, in a sense, allows
something to do while you don't know what to do? Clean up or move on to the next problem, work that until you're up against a wall, and keep moving on to problems, and your subconscious will have worked on the problem and solved it, just like sleep, only cheaper.
I guess the problem is when your subconscious deals, or rather indulges cliche, in the sense that you don't know whether what you're indulging is something that is fresh and new, or is something that is just repeating the tired images of the past. I mean, Werner, something that you've spoken about a lot is resisting the commercialization of vision and pushing against the idea of vision as a commodity.
Well, yes, of course, when you are in arts or when you are into filmmaking, you have to be aware and you have to have your senses out there, and you have to avoid the very obvious traps. And they're so obvious that we don't even have to discuss them.
Careful about trash talking cliches. I mean, we're Americans here, and the cliches are what make the world go around. Our lives are made up of them. It's just like if you can be cool about how you represent it.
What would be an example of a good cliche?
Man's lost in the desert and he can't find his keys. That's kind of like we've all been there.
Yeah. Although I've never seen that with another man making a weird clamp in a tent that then locks that man's car up.
Right. That's Ed Ruscha being a genius in the desert, figuring it out.
Actually, maybe could you talk about the casting of Ed Ruscha, and what do you think that he brought to your film, or what was it about him that you wanted to express?
Well, I think Ed's a really important artist, and maybe one of the greatest artists who did pop art and conceptual art. I'm not getting into the whole, but I think he also skirts the edge of cliche and better than anyone. And sort of like when we were working on this movie, we imagined an Ed Ruscha-like character, and we reached out to Ed, and he was interested in doing it. But he's like Werner is our father's age, and in a lot of ways is like conceptually a father of the kind of work that we're doing. So it kind of has there's this paternal lineage going on.
I would like to add something, because when you see Ed Ruscha, you are speaking of more abstract things, but looking at his face, he's very good on screen. That you immediately understood that right. And I think he would fit very well into a movie like, let's say, next to Marlon Brando in a Godfather film, is a stoic, very quiet, stoic mastermind of something very big. So he's a very natural on screen, and you have to understand such a thing. Otherwise, it would be boring. The film would be completely boring. You have to have the right person there.
I think that's what we learned from Marcel Duchamp, is like if you're going to put a bar of soap in your art piece, make sure it's the right bar especially in something that's kind of a simple movie, just the right person. And Ed's, I mean, he's like Harry Dean Stanton's cooler older brother.
Yeah, that's some sort of the league. Is Harry Dean Stanton in Godfather? I don't know.
Yes, he was one of the FBI agents.
Okay, maybe Ed could be the mastermind of bringing the mafia down, who doesn't have to say much, just pointing out once in a while where to go and apprehend the bad ones. Or maybe he could be a good villain as well. I wouldn't doubt. I think there's a versatility.
It was his idea to put the horse's head in his bed.
Okay.
He's like a wildie. They just call him when they need something that packs a punch.
Oh yeah, okay.
One of the things that struck me when I was watching this film is the fact that you read it as well as watch it. And Werner, you've talked a lot about how you feel that those who read own the world, and you spend more time reading than you do watching films. And I was wondering if you could talk about what for you is the difference between reading something and looking at something.
Well, I think we know it all. We don't have to explain it. It's just certain preferences, and I keep saying we are in a world with that reduction of language into the tiny, unimportant fragments that are floating around. So I don't even have a cell phone myself. I know you caught me in the moment. Now, I think it's for decades now that reading has somehow diminished, and even in academia, even if you go into a seminar in humanities, or let's say for ancient Greek philosophers, the students do not read. And I have seen it because one of my friends teaches classics at Boston University, and the students are barely capable of writing 2 or 3 coherent sentences, creating one short, simple idea. They're incapable, and I think that's why reading has become so important. It gives us a conceptual insight. It gives us sense for poetry, for rhythm, for overarching long, big arcs of narration. It gives us insight into the soul of others. We are occupying the heart and soul of somebody else who has written the book. And I keep telling young filmmakers, don't ask me about the newest model of camera and what I think about it. It's all uninteresting. You have to read. If you don't read, you will still make films, but only mediocre at best. If you do not read, maybe you become a filmmaker. But those who are really good, they do read. All of them.
I'm often insecure. I'm often insecure a little bit about the movies that we make because they're not about people, and most of the time, and they are about people, but sort of behind the scenes. They're more about like process, and they're more about hands making things and so forth. Try to bring this back to the reading thing, but start reading. I'm halfway through Moby Dick, and Moby Dick, they say, is the great American novel. And in Moby Dick, they have these chapters, like the movies we made. I had no idea about this. There's a chapter called The Line, and it's about the rope that they use. There's a chapter called The Masthead, which is it's not a crow's nest. A crow's nest is on a Greenland whaler, and it has a roof on it. But a masthead is just like a little basket, and that's where there's 3 of them, one on each mast. But I don't know what my point is, but my point is I concur and read. Yeah. Definitely read. And
great novels can be cinematic in a way, in the way that you project them in your own imagination, of course.
Reading makes you a better writer, and writing is how this starts. And Van Neistat's 10 Rules of Filmmaking. Rule number 2 is find the right pencil.
Pentel P209. .9 millimeter, and it doesn't break.
But it really, what it really means is have your tool together, so you're not even thinking about it, and the ideas can flow.
Mm.
And I know when I'm reading terrible books, and sometimes I read terrible books because they're the only things on certain subjects that I'm looking at, my mind kind of gets mushy. But if I'm reading a non-important book that's really well written, it gives me more information just because it's the way it's crafted.
Doesn't have to be the great books all the time. I do remember, and I haven't done it yet, Errol Morris, who is a voracious reader, and you can tell the moment you speak to him, you know this man has a profound knowledge of books and literature and poetry. And he urged me strongly, read a book which is lousy. It's a most stupid book. It's written by a failed lion tamer whose arm got bitten off by a lion. But reading against its texture, it's wonderful. So read those things as well.
It's about a certain rhythm, I guess, and which is something you've, of course, often extolled the wonders of walking, and there must be a parallel, I imagine, for you, Werner, about walking and reading, about something that allows you space to contemplate the world rather than rush through it.
Yeah, we shouldn't extend it too far. Of course, I do not speak about walking, but traveling on foot, like we did since time immemorial. The world reveals itself, and that's my dictum. The world reveals itself to those who travel on foot. And I always say you should travel on foot once in your life, a larger distance, but not as a backpacker, not with a tent and your cooking utensils and your household on your back. You have to be very light, and you have to contact people when your canteen is empty and you're thirsty, and there's no water like in the desert, but in the next building there will be a faucet or farmers. You have to ask the farmers if you can refill your canteen. So it gives you a deep insight into what the world is all about, and cinema needs, or those who make cinema need to know about the world and understand it. Same thing for you, Tom. You have seen a lot in your life, and you have, instead of traveling on foot, you have created a relationship with material things and with tools. You're very, very good with tools, and I envy you for that. I'm really lousy with tools and understanding how to create certain things out of wood, and you have only very simple things, and I find it totally fascinating. Somebody who is a rock singer from the group Rammstein, he told me he worked as an apprentice carpenter, and when he did his masterpiece, the master gave him a trunk of tree and said to him, make a window. Here are the tools, make a window. And he did it. And I truly find this totally fascinating. And the rock singer who can create a window out of a log of wood knows what he's doing on stage.
Thank you, but I agree. These tools, these skills that we have, like that when you said that you were not the best football player, but you always knew where to be on the field, and that kept you as a professional football player.
No, I was not professional. It was fifth league at best.
Okay,
so,
but
I would score goals because I would read the game,
and
I would understand space.
And those skills helped you to be in the right place and trust your intuition as a filmmaker.
Well, filmmaking has a lot to do with understanding space, and that's why when I'm on a set, I start to shift furniture around physically. So I start to understand spaces. So I do normally on movie sets, you have stand-ins for the light. I always do stand in myself because I want to see, aha, the light is here. If I step a little bit too far there, the light will be covered by you. I will be in the shadow. How would I move? How would choreography of actors function? And I learn it by just being physically there and understanding the space with my legs.
Can I just ask about, because when you talked about traveling by foot, which is virtue, and traveling by air is sin.
Tourism is sin. Traveling on foot is virtue, and tourism is sin.
Right, that's right. The operative experience for me is fear, because when you stay at the Four Seasons, in 20 years you're never going to remember it. But when you stayed at that place that was a converted prison and didn't have air conditioning, you'll never forget it. And which one of those makes your life richer or helps you to understand the human condition better? So when you're traveling by foot and you have to go to the pharmacy to ask for a glass of water, you have a human connection. And that is initially, maybe for some of us, unsettling and uncomfortable, but through that uncomfort, we're not going to take a bullet for asking for a cup of water almost any time. And that this movie was originally called The Fear Bullets. That was the original title of it. And I think for me, everything I make is about embracing and engaging with my fear. That is something that there's a lot of language for working on. And that's something that your movies always help me with, because I'm not talking about these fearless heroes, but these heroes who are either in touch with their fear or have anxiety about it, but it's an engaged topic.
Well, let's not get too far into my films, but personally, I do not really understand what fear is. It doesn't. It's not really not even in my vocabulary. So, I wonder what sort of fear do you have? I'm not. We are not in confession here.
No, I think just like the fears that we all have of mortality, of not being loved, of hunger, paperwork, of the motor vehicle department.
Yeah, but you mentioned the banalities like paperwork. Sure, you have to understand that there are certain enemies out there for every sort of intuition, for every kind of art. There are natural enemies. Some of the natural enemies are one of the obvious ones is bureaucracy. And of course, bureaucracy functions with paper. Feed them with crazy papers, engage them. They love to munch on paper. So you take advantage of paper and enjoy them to freak out over what's the meaning of this stack of paper that you feed them.
Information barrage.
Yes, and misleading them and forging documents. That's what you have to do when you make films. Forging a shooting permit in a country that has a military dictatorship. So you have to do that right. And the only thing that you have to watch out, you must not be caught. and I have never been caught. And I've done magnificent forgeries. And without those forgeries, we wouldn't have my film Fitzcarraldo. It was only because I forged a shooting permit in Peru where there was a military dictatorship and military camps along the rivers wouldn't let me pass. So what do you do?
What tools did you use to forge it? Did you use like photocopy machines? And
no, not in the jungle, but I had people in Lima, and they were good, and they actually got stationery, or they forged stationery of the office of the President of the Republic. And in fact, the President of the Republic signed it, Belaunde el Presidente, actually, and with a not ballpoint pen, with a fountain, with an ink pen, beautifully with the flourish that was mine actually. Launde. So you have to enjoy it. Enjoy paper if necessary. And of course, when you do art, are obvious. They are obvious, and you have to be vigilant and do something about it. The only one who allows you to do what you do is you yourself.
Of course. Thank you. We persist despite our fears, and we commit. When we do a forged document, we go all the way. And we commit 100%. There's no half-assing it. You do it as if, and your life does depend on it.
We were talking yesterday, Werner, about, we were at lunch yesterday, and Werner was explaining that the only thing that had stopped the filming of one, I think it was in The Abyss, when you were talking about wanting to talk to a prisoner on death row, and it wasn't any kind of fear or inhibition that stopped you filming. It was the fact that it might put this man's life in some kind of danger, because he might say
actually,
something.
it was one of those cases that I explained to Tom. Yes, I take a no for an answer. In one case, filming with inmates on death row in Texas. Normally, Texas is very media friendly because they are very proud of their practice of killing off the bad guy, the real baddies. And they make it public, and they allow cameras, not during the execution, but you can talk to an inmate on camera, and there are certain protocols. And I had everything set and ready, and was ready to travel to Huntsville in Texas. And all of a sudden, the attorney of an inmate writes me an email and says, I cannot rule over what my client on death row has permitted you, but my client has a tendency to say stupid things on camera or in public or to the media. I wish you wouldn't do it, because we still have a last appeal for clemency going. And within 5 seconds flat, I sent an email back, shooting is cancelled. So it was not even a full no, but it's obvious. There's certain things where you take no for an answer. They're obvious.
I mean, that's a moral decision, not one about personal danger. So that's,
but sometimes practical decisions.
Yeah.
What can you do? Is it really doable or not? Can you move a ship of that size over a mountain? Can you do it or not?
Yeah, and you did it. In your film, it would seem that nature is the thing, in a sense, that there is a certain discomfort or an alienation with, because the silver tent seems very out of place in the desert. Ed Ruscha is risking, being isolated out there and possibly suffering from that. Was that something that you could maybe talk about, the relationship between, in a sense, culture and nature that you've made a little parable about in your film?
Well, I don't know, but about this one, but man's contempt for nature is a theme that will never go away with me. Ever since I read Against Nature, and the idea of us trying to bring our kitchen with us, or air conditioning is probably the ultimate ultimate vice of the human condition. There's that amazing scene in Fitzcarraldo where they make ice and they give it as some kind of bribe to the local guys. He's got the tent, he's got the car, and the symbol of utopian architecture and freedom, that Buckminster Fuller's geodesic dome, but he's still fucked in the middle of a desert by bureaucracy.
And then you counter that, in a sense, with humor as well, which actually is something that is very important to you and work, there's often a thread of humour. And with you too, Werner, there's, even in the darkest of moments, sometimes there's absurdity, or there's, you know, I think you said somewhere that everyone ends up being a clown eventually.
It's a jihad in the art world against humor in art. People, you know, want to make sure that Barnett Newman is really serious, but from what I heard, he had a great sense of humor.
As did Solowit with your, you know, with your quotation of Solowit.
But it's important to remind all the haters out there that no one ever got laid by boring someone to death.
Any thoughts on that?
It's just, Tom's just funny. The studio is a funny place. Everything is dreadfully serious in the studio. It's all life or death. It's like this, you know, you don't have number 10 flat sheet metal screws 3/4 inch, and it's like the whole thing grinds to a halt. But everyone who works there is funny, and it's like a prerequisite, and it just comes out. And the fucking charger thing, like, really? We can't standardize a fucking charger? And yeah, we laugh because it's true, and it makes us crazy.
Look, you know, before we're talking about fears, and I was really jealous from a moment ago until I came to my senses about you not saying that you don't have fear, and I guess I am a little jealous, but I'm just more neurotic, whatever. But there's a duality where we take things really, really, really seriously, like we're talking about the screws, and to make stuff you have to be deadly serious and focused, or else you cut your hand off on the table saw. And we made an amazing movie called Love Letter to Plywood that, if you haven't seen it, it's on 10bullets.com, and it's the best. It's the only movie about plywood that matters. So there's a place where fear cannot exist. You have to just be focused. And then there are other times where maybe it's indulgent or philosophical, or maybe it's a form of weakness. I'm not even sure. This isn't psychotherapy. But there's another side of vulnerability that's important to engage in, and humor is, in a way, the antidote to how, like, tedious it is. I mean, to make something out of wood is the most exhausting thing possible. Only porcelain is worse.
Werner, you've expressed yours, perhaps, as one of the founders of cinema. You've talked about.
Well, yes, it doesn't really fit into the questions of fear, because Buster Keaton has a strange fearlessness. He doesn't even notice what's going on when half a barn or so collapses, and he's standing there in the window, just fits exactly his body, and he's unhurt, and he's unfazed. So it's something like absence of recognition of danger. There's something stoic about him, stoicism and silence. That's what I really love about him, and of course he's very close to my heart. There are many Americans that I really respect and admire, but there are two that touch me to my core, and both of them are somehow silent figures, and I'm speaking of Buster Keaton and Muhammad Ali. But Muhammad Ali, the last 30 years of his life, being forced into silence by disease, by illness. And he was the greatest rapper, and what a tragedy, what a profound tragedy that he was forced into silence. And Tom and I kept saying that both of them should be an addendum to Mount Rushmore, looking across America in perennial silence and moving us more than the founding fathers that you see there. They belong there.
Tom, can you organize this?
We've been studying the rocks.
One, who?
I don't know, it's like Robert Cleveland up there. One of those guys doesn't matter, at least. Compared to Ali.
Don't ask me. I'm not an American, and I must say that everyone who is there is rightfully there on Mount Rushmore. But I wish we would have them flanked by Ali and Buster Keaton. That would be wonderful.
We're starting a Kickstarter fund.
Yeah.
Didn't Ali say, "I just tell the truth, that's the funniest joke in the world"? I think that was Ali.
What was it?
"I just tell the truth, that's the funniest joke in the world."
Maybe that's a good point to ask for questions. Yeah? Is there a microphone if anyone wants to ask a question? Oh yeah, there's a microphone. Great. Okay, there's one over here. Thank you, in the middle.
Yes, thank you.
Hi guys, I love the film, it was wonderful. I wanted to ask questions of Werner, but then like you guys also answer. One of your kind of modus operandi as a filmmaker is an understanding what ecstatic truth is. Has that evolved as you've kind of grown old as a filmmaker, or is your understanding of that stayed fairly consistent?
Well, it's an ongoing project, and I have understood it only well into my life as a filmmaker, that there was a deep question about truth. And of course, when you look at documentaries, the so-called cinema verité, which even has it in its postulated title, I think they are way too much oriented and guided by facts, and facts do not constitute truth. Yesterday we spoke a little bit about it. When you are doing art or films, you have to have the courage to modify facts in such a way that they resemble truth more than reality. And we spoke in context with a film that I'm doing right now on the British writer Bruce Chatwin, who sometimes modified what he saw and describes, but he didn't give you half-truth. He would give you a truth and a half. And the simplest thing to explain what I mean by ecstatic truth, by modifying facts for a deeper truth, is a sculpture of the Pietà by Michelangelo in the Vatican, in St. Peter's. The face of Jesus taken from the cross is a tormented face of a 33-year-old man. And when you look at the face of his mother is 17. And I find it extraordinary because Michelangelo did not try to cheat us and did not try to lie to us and give us fake news or so. He just pointed to the deeper underlying truth of both Jesus Christ and his mother. So, and that's the shortest form, and we shouldn't waste our time here discussing what I mean with the ecstasy of truth, but it points back to what you mentioned with the mystics sometimes, and you see it in late medieval mystics, understanding the truth of faith in a way where they would stand besides themselves, they would step outside of themselves into some sort of a mystical rapture. And without rapture, you would not really create anything significant in the world of art as something where you step outside of yourself.
I mean, that's been something that has been a continuing thread through all of your films, a sense of awe, really.
Yeah, but it's not that I'm planning now, I'm doing something that has to do with truth. Projects are coming at me like big invasions, and I can't help it. When I see something is so vehemently coming at me, then I do it. And I never think about what could it mean, and does it have to do with truth or anything. I just don't waste a minute on those questions when I'm working. Not 1 minute.
It's crucial to not let truth get in the way of telling a good story, and but at the same time, this notion of rapture is so underexpressed. There's no place that teaches you the importance of that, because this is going to sound kind of like mystical or hokey, but you gotta feel it and you gotta believe. And there's a spirituality to, I mean, that some of these ideas that we do with our art, I mean, are there a lot of artists in this room? No? A couple? I mean, I always think that some of the ideas behind the art are preposterous and even ridiculous, but through their execution and their dedication, they become profound.
Absolutely, I agree.
Like that's that song, "You Can't Take That Away From Me." Like you can't, you know, you might think it's stupid, but you can't take away all the hours of love and devotion that I put into doing it. And that's the motivation.
Ben, did you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? If you could just put your hand up. Oh, yeah, there's one.
Hi. Everybody's said nothing about the Bible. What was on your mind using the Bible? I mean, it could have been a telephone book. It could have been, God only knows. You could have even used that little stool. So why the Bible?
I'm so glad you
Could not have used the stool.
Stool's too tall.
Well, okay.
That was Tom's actual Bible. And we took the pages out and put plywood in there, a little movie magic, and drew pages on the plywood. But
It's out on the street, you can look at it right now.
it did not fit. The jack didn't get the car high enough off of the ground, and it was just, I don't even remember how we came.
Come on, it's the Bible, it's the elevation of God and spirituality and all that fake news nonsense. It's like jacking it up, that extra 4 inches that we need to get the dolly underneath.
I always had the feeling, Tom, that it had to do with the Old Testament, where you have long, very precise descriptions, like working guidance for carpenters, how to build the Ark of Covenant. It's very, very interesting that all of a sudden in the Bible, and you didn't even know you should read the Bible. Just don't use it only as a tool, read it. and I keep pointing out that hardly anyone reads the Bible, and it's very early in the beginning of the book Moses that Moses was heavy of tongue. Maybe he had a stutter, he couldn't really speak in public, and his kid brother Aaron had to speak for him. And nobody realizes that it's in the Bible that he was sought for homicide. He had committed something like second-degree murder, and everybody looks at me and I say, "Read the Bible, idiots! It's right there. Just read the Bible. Just don't use it as a tool for lifting a car high up."
It's the kind of the ultimate book next to McMaster car catalog, because it's got all the stories in it.
Yes, and some of the most beautiful poetry, the Song of Songs, or the Psalms, or the Book of Job. When I go on a difficult shoot, I always have the Bible with me, because the Book of Job is one of the things that give me consolation when it's really getting tough.
They're like, I never understand which Bible to get. Like, is there
King James.
Yeah, it's you hang on to King James, because it's a truly wonderful translation.
That's
It
the
has
one
a
you're talking about?
No, I also read it in German, the original translation by Martin Luther, which in fact created my language, High German, the proper German language. Before that, there were only dialects. There was no common language, and Martin Luther, the reformer, created it, and he had an enormous sense for poetry and power of language. And in a way, King James Bible has a similar quality. So hang on to the King James Bible. Whether it's the most accurate or not, that doesn't really matter.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you read the Bible because it's an extraordinary piece of literature rather than the fact that you're not a religious man.
Well, I started to read the Bible because in my adolescence I had a very intense, dramatically intense religious phase that lasted for a fairly short time, but of course I did read the Bible. And I'm fairly good in quoting the Bible.
Oh wait, could you wait for a microphone, please? Oh, it would be good to share it around other people, though. Oh, quick one. Yeah.
I just feel like it almost comes across as random, and so he's got it in his car, but he didn't take it to his tent, and I don't know. It was just kind of I guess mystical moment.
How do we know it's his car?
Good point.
He had a lot of tickets that he seemed to expect, or he had a relationship with the tickets, so I assumed it was his car. Anyway, I don't mean to terrorize you over this topic, but the Bible is like a major metaphor, and I just wondered,
Yeah, and that's why it's in there. I think it has a lot of weight, and I think with art it's important that I've got my opinions about the Bible and you have yours. I think if it was only one way, it would be propaganda, and I think it's important that it be open enough for you to have your what it means to you.
Yeah, mystics, not rationalists. Yeah.
It was the right choice.
Yeah. Another question. Any hands out there? Oops. One down here at the front.
It's going to be very, very general question for all three of you. And the question is, why do you make films?
So I'm not good at any other thing. That's it. You tell me.
Van, by the way, is of the three of us. Werner, you said you think you're impressed by my building skills, but Van's the best bricoleur. Although I don't know about your skills. At the table, you're the best builder, but so it's not just filmmaking, yeah. But we make them. The reason we make movies is they're industrial films, and they're sort of like when you show up at McDonald's on your first day. Maybe not your first day, but when they teach you to flip burgers, they show you a movie about how to do it. And those movies have to be as short as possible, give the most information, and not waste time because they're paying you to watch them. And so the movies that we make are made for the studio, for the cult, for the community, of which you're all consenting members tonight by watching this one. But that's why these movies aren't documentaries or narratives, they're industrial films. But
it's a mystery to me. I don't know. It's so strange. I don't know. Why do you make films?
Well, not easy to say, but maybe because they come with such vehemence at me. So, and they come most of the time, many of them, and I can't duck away all the time. And there's some of them really vehemently coming at me, so I better deal with it.
Man up here, yeah.
This is Shelley. This is Ed Ruscha's stunt double in the film.
So, Van, thanks for having given me that opportunity. And I think I want to go back to the question of daring, because having been there with you, I don't think you've taken adequate notice of the fact that everything we did because you wanted to dare how to do it, including dealing with the park ranger who pulled in that one day. So I think I'd like you to just tell people how brave you were in setting this thing up and what we did.
I mean, I was terrified and went forth, so maybe that's bravery, but we didn't have permits. We didn't have forged permits either. But Shelley brought his puppy, his German Shepherd puppy, And the BLM park ranger who drove his truck onto our set, and we're in the middle of shooting, was, enamored with Mac, and that saved us. But the things that are scary about, the things that we had to be brave about was we didn't have a location for that, for the geodesic dome. And there's a production manager that we work with named BC Slace, and he went to the feed store in town, in Pioneer Town, the saddle shop, and he wore cowboy boots and Wranglers. And he talked to the man and he said, hey, do you know anybody with a ranch or a big piece of property where we could shoot? We need to build this such and such a thing. We didn't have any. You're supposed to have, there's all these rules in California that you're supposed to have like, that thing, the thing that we built, you're supposed to have like an inspector and blah, 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 blah. And we just did it. And all these things that could fall through the cracks, thank God, like they went our way. And I don't know. I think this bravery is basically just being scared shitless and just gotta go ahead and do it.
Be afraid and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two more questions. Oh, just over here. Yeah.
Right over here next to each other.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay, I have to ask a question which reveals insider's knowledge, which is that the 10 bullets that Tom created had some certain amount of inspiration in the NASA space program that got humans to the moon, creation of something that never existed before. And I don't want to put Tom on the spot here, but I couldn't help but wonder, as maybe the only rocket scientist in the room here tonight.
Dr. Greg Vane.
The name doesn't matter, but the question is, knowing that, this creation that humanity came up with, the men and the women of NASA created this ability to get humans to the moon and back in a decade, phenomenal accomplishment by any count. I wondered how much of the paradox bullets were also kind of inspired in your fertile mind by maybe some of the other rules, or not rules, but kind of the guidelines or the ethos of what people at NASA or in any creative endeavor, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, go through in order to be able to do these new things that have never been done before.
Well, a man on the moon is this incredible achievement. It's kind of the greatest work of art of all time in a lot of ways, because it was a military scale operation that was done just for winning hearts and minds. And it's in a way, it represents the end of religion for a generation or more. It's a triumph of science over faith. Although, Greg, you once said, of course I'm religious, I'm a scientist, or of course I'm an atheist, I'm a scientist. What was that one? Yeah.
Spiritual because I'm a scientist, or the other way around.
Spiritual from a scientist. But it's important also to trace the arc from the people that were abducted from Africa, who helped build this country strong, to gain economic independence from Europe, to eventually outproduce Nazi Germany, win the war, and abduct their scientists, or embrace their scientists, to eventually go to the moon and kill God. So all of that incredible expense for just an idea is a little bit like art to me.
I'll start by saying Dr. Vane and I had this collective thought that we came for Sachs, but we stayed for Herzog, so thank you for that and your knowledge. My question pertains to the sort of creative process. Sometimes I'm a writer and I sort of think about this T.S. Eliot line from Proof Rock when he said, I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And, Mr. Sachs, when you said procrastination can sort of be this, it can help you in your creative process. You have other things that you put to the side, and then, whether unconsciously or whatnot, you can kind kind of process it and come back to it later. So, for everyone up there now, at what point do you sort of like kill your drawings or come back to something in the creative process and sort of say like, all right, I'm going to put this up on the shelf, or, you know, this just isn't working, or I'm going to keep chipping away at it?
I'm going to try and think of a very recent example. I don't know. I think when it starts to make me feel crazy, I don't give up, but you put it away, you come back, you sleep on it. I'm very big on sleeping on it, but I don't know. You're pretty tough at like just hammering it away.
I like what Werner said about how I'm going to screw this up, but how it's almost as if you can't resist it. It's just the concept just come to you, and you have to. You didn't use the word submit, but you just have to do it because it's irresistible.
Yeah, not
Or
irresistibly. I use a metaphor which I have used before. It's like you wake up at 4 in the morning because something is stirring in your kitchen downstairs, and you come down and there are 5 burglars, uninvited. And one of them comes wildly swinging with an axe at you. You better deal with that one first. And then as the others are there, there's only one rule with God, right through the middle of them as they are coming. So sometimes there's no space for procrastination. But something came up that was very interesting just before in the question about landing on the moon, of course, a phenomenal achievement. They did the doable. And when you hear about the dreams now to colonize Mars or colonize our next stars out there, Alpha Centauri or Beta Centauri, only 4.5 light years away, you just don't tackle it. There's a no out there, an evident no, because it would take you 110,000 years one way to even get there. And then you arrive there and it's a couple of 100,000 degrees hot. So you just don't do it. And the other next ones are already 20, 40 light years away. It would take you 500,000 years to get there. You just don't plan that. You write it as a science fiction novel. You make it as a movie. Make it as a Star Wars movie, and then it's fine. But don't plan it.
Okay. Another one down here in the front. Yeah.
I don't really have a question.
Yeah.
Mr. Herzog, I think that we're on the verge of discovering that the fastest thing in the universe is not light, but thought. And by thinking yourself someplace, you might find that that is the fastest way to get to those places that you speak of. Second, I agree with you about Muhammad Ali, and he wrote one of the most beautiful poems ever spoken, and it's the shortest poem on record. It's 3 words. You, me, we.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem. And last, this is a beautiful film, and if anyone in the audience hasn't seen the film that Werner Herzog made about a plastic bag, I encourage you to see it.
I did not make it, sorry. That was Ramin Bahrani, a very, very fine young American filmmaker with Iranian roots. And it is his film, I Only Speak the Voice of the Plastic Bag, who is in search of his maker. And I do it well, I speak it well. It's on YouTube, Plastic Bag by Ramin Bahrani.
It's one of the most beautiful love stories you'll ever see.
Matthew is the voice of bullet number 1, Work to Code, by the way.
Well, I'm sure we could keep talking for ages, but I'm afraid we have to wind it up now. And I'd like to thank Frieze Art Fair, Paramount, Gagosian, Tom Sachs Studio, and most importantly, Werner Herzog, Van Neistat, and Tom. It's been a really work together. Thank you.